what the hell is going on in the world of Dragon Ball right now? I mean, I'm gonna be honest, guys, it has been very dry. Now, I've talked about this before on Twitter, that fans, after DBS, the anime, ended, did not know what a real Dragon Ball drought actually looked and felt like. Well, at this point, I think it's fair to say, they do now. See, we had movies, we had a monthly manga that was coming out consistently, we had stuff happening. It might have been slow, it might have been less intense and less high energy as it was when Dragon Ball Super's anime was around, or even, during the original run and then further syndication of the original series being Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z during the 2000s, 90s, and late 80s. But it did have some energy, some motion, some movement. Now the most motion we get for the series is Toyotaro making some vague comment that everybody has to talk about for a week, or Ioku farts, which means, of course, the Dragon Ball Super anime is returning in 2026, right? So we gotta make a video about that. Or maybe One Piece animators took a week off. That means they're working on DBS Season 2 and Dragon Ball Daima Season 2 and a new Dragon Ball movie. But that's all bullshit. So let me update you on the current state of Dragon Ball as far as everybody knows, including myself. The first thing to get across is Daima is of course over. It's been over for a little while now, but as far as we know, there will be no continuation of Daima. I know people were looking at like the bonus scene at the end of the series and thinking, oh, that's a setup for a future Dragon Ball Daima series, like a sequel series, a season 2. But if you ask me, I think it was just a funny joke to end the series on, and I don't think you should take it more seriously than that. I really do think Dragon Ball Daima had its moment where it was Toriyama's big focus before his untimely passing. It was a passion project for him, whether you liked it or not, and I think it happened. And now that it's happened, because it was so controversial, I'd be surprised if they wanted to go back to that IP at any point in the near future, or really ever, to be honest. But while we're on the subject of animes, we gotta talk about Dragon Ball Super. Now, Dragon Ball Super Season 2 of Dragon Ball Super is a big talking point and has been since literally the series ended in 2018. What people might not realize is the time scale of things. Dragon Ball Super came out 10 years ago as of this year. That is a decade since that series started. Pretty insane. What's even crazier is 7 years ago, in the Dragon Ball Super manga, the Moro arc started, and we still have not seen a hint of that getting animated anytime soon. Even crazier than that to me is 4 years ago, Ultra Ego Vegeta appeared for the first time. It's been 4 years since Vegeta got his newest transformation in the manga. It is very, very, very long overdue, if you ask me. And I think a lot of people feel this way. I think it deserves to be animated. The Moro arc is Dragon Ball Super's best arc. Anime, manga, everything. It is its best, most cohesively written story from cover to cover. Reading it monthly felt a bit weird, but when you sit down and read the whole thing, it really does feel good. It's really right in the territory of a classic, like late original Dragon Ball, maybe Dragon Ball Z style story. It feels really good, really powerful stuff. I actually really want to see that animated. And despite my gripes with the Granola arc, it does a lot of interesting things and definitely deserves to be animated. So the fact we've waited this long and there's still no anime adaptation is completely insane to me. So that should make it clear there is enough content in the Dragon Ball Super manga for an anime series to actually happen and not have these big swaths of time where they need to punch in filler to fill in the gaps, especially when you realize they could do an extended version of the Broly movie and an extended version of Superhero in the series itself. And they likely would do that if they're gonna make the series regardless, so that way there's no go see a movie and come back sort of situation like there is with the manga currently. I think what will happen if Dragon Ball Super ever comes back as a season 2 will be extended Broly movie. Remember, Toriyama did a 3-hour script for that movie that had to be cut down, so there's plenty of content that Toei still has that they could use, and it's direct from Toriyama. Then we do Moro, Granola, and then we have the extended version of Dragon Ball Super Superhero, which took place in the Dragon Ball Super manga. There might even be some stuff that Toei still has from working with Toriyama that they could throw in, but at the very bare minimum, there are the extra chapters before and after, and slight changes to content in the middle that the manga actually does. And that would be plenty of stuff for Dragon Ball Super Season 2, but as far as I know, there's no movement on that. So who knows when or if we'll ever get it. I think Toei likes money enough, though, that we'll get it eventually. Speaking of movies, though, we also haven't had a movie announcement in a while, have we? We had 2 movies after Dragon Ball Super finished airing as a series. We had Broly and Superhero, and Broly came out really fast after Dragon Ball Super ended, and Superhero came out a bit later. But as of this point, it's been a while since both of those movies came out, and we haven't heard anything about a new movie since. Not a 3D one, not a traditional 2D one either. So I don't know when or if we're gonna get another movie. Maybe that's a good sign for an anime series, but I just want to be clear, despite what maybe a random YouTuber has said, there is no movement in the movie department at Toei for a Dragon Ball movie of any kind, at least as far as I know, and I think as far as anyone really knows. I recorded this video on September 22nd, so I'd feel bad not including stuff that's happened since then, like this that came out on September 25th, which is a comment from Ioku. Yes, I'm talking about Ioku farting like I made a joke about in the beginning of this. It is what it is. It happens sometimes. But he does seem to imply that something Dragon Ball related will happen at some point in the future. But he's also been hinting at this for a while now, so I wouldn't take it too crazily one way or another. I think something is, of course, going to happen in this franchise because it's a popular series and it makes a lot of money for people. Okay, back to the main video. But okay, I get it. You might be saying the animation side of Dragon Ball is suffering. Okay. What about some other stuff, like the manga? Well, the Dragon Ball Super manga is still on hiatus, and it has been for a while. It basically went on hiatus right after Toriyama's passing. We got 1 bonus chapter since then, but it hasn't been back to its monthly release schedule, though everything calls this a hiatus. So unlike the Dragon Ball Super anime, where people call it a hiatus, but officially I don't think it's actually a hiatus. I think it actually is a series that's ended, but maybe if it comes back, they'll keep the branding, who knows? But with the manga, everything says it's on an indefinite hiatus, or a hiatus at the very least. So I think there's no need to rush to it being canceled or anything, which I've also seen people say. As far as we know, it's not. And I don't think all these like press tours and interviews with Toyotaro would happen and Shueisha would let them happen if Toyotaro was basically fired. I think there will be a Dragon Ball Super manga at some point, a continuation of some kind, and maybe it wraps up after the very next arc, and that's it. And maybe that's when Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Super goes back to permanently dead. But until that happens, I don't think there's any reason to believe it's truly canceled. I think it's on hiatus, like everywhere is saying. So it's just a matter of time. But when? Who knows? No one knows. And that's sort of a running theme throughout this first section of the video, I guess. All right, so nothing anime going on, nothing manga going on. What about the games? People love Dragon Ball games. Not me. I don't really like Dragon Ball games, but people love Dragon Ball games. What is going on in the world of Dragon Ball games? Now, I might be looking this way at my notes a little bit because, again, not truly versed in Dragon Ball games. I'm going to try and keep this brief so that way I'm not talking about things I don't actually have experience or knowledge in. But I do want to talk about the stuff that I see going on. And, if you know differently in the comments, let me know. Let me see. Let's start with Sparking Zero. Is Sparking Zero dead? I don't know. It apparently just got a DLC for Daima, and people are really enjoying that as far as I'm aware. But apparently, according to people who enjoy those type of games, it is crucially missing some of the broader and more important features that these older games had. These basic features of like character customization to some degree, and arenas, I think, was one of the big complaints I saw recurring when I was trying to read through things that people were complaining about, as well as some other things I'm sure you could tell me about in the comments, were missing from this game, and potentially still are missing from this game. And even if they came in, I think it might be too late to recover the reputation of a game that was so hyped up and so truly thought to be the next big return to form Dragon Ball game that it might just be too late to save Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, but you never know. A good DLC can change the world, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. The next game, Xenoverse 2, got Daima DLC as well. You'll notice that as a running trend here, but it's also 2025. Why are we still playing Xenoverse 2? I think Xenoverse has always had this very hardcore fan base, this like core audience that just plays a lot of Xenoverse, maybe plays some other games, but mainly plays Xenoverse. That's their home, that's their game, that's where their OC lives, that's where their content that they like is, this sort of alternate universe sort of Dragon Ball stuff, even more so potentially than the what ifs and Sparking Zero. And so People really, really like Xenoverse. And so for some of them, it's hard to let go. But I don't think Xenoverse is doing anything to grow or even sustain the fandom. If anything, I think Xenoverse sort of slowly loses people over time, even though it has a strong core audience that it holds on to decently well with 500,000 packs of DLC. They are printing money with that game. You can't say they're not. But is it really doing anything for Dragon Ball as a whole? I'm not too sure about that. Next is Kakarot. Kakarot got Daima DLC. I think that's all I could say about Kakarot. Kakarot's a single-player game, unless something has changed since I knew anything about it. And so it doesn't really have the legs of something that has a multiplayer component where people can interact and make sort of infinite content with other people. It sort of lives and dies by its own content in the game. I never really enjoyed Kakarot, and man, I just wish it was a better game. They call it an action RPG. I love action RPGs, but it's definitely not what you would think of as a traditional action RPG. I wish I could avoid talking about gambling on this channel, so, you know, if you're under 21, you gotta turn off this video, of course, because I'm talking about gacha games, all right? We got Dokkan and Legends. Now, I've seen some drama about Legends on my timeline. I don't understand any of it. I don't play these games. I've tried both of them. They're not for me. They're just not for me, man. I'm not a gacha guy, but I don't think gachas are growing the fandom in any meaningful way or even sustaining the fandom. I think maybe gachas sustain the fandom more than something like Xenoverse does because the barrier to entry to content is a little bit easier, especially new content, because you could get the free pulls, right? But something like a gacha game is truly for the hardcore of the hardcore. It's if you want those characters, you want to pull them, you want to be good at the game, you want to grind in Dokkan and level up. I think that's how the game works. I sound like such an old man talking about gacha games I don't understand, man. But again, I just don't think they're doing that much for the series. I don't think they're innovating in any interesting way that's pulling people in and being like, oh shit, Dragon Ball stuff, let's go, man. I'm going to watch some episodes of the show. I'm going to pick up the manga and read the arcs that the anime didn't cover. I don't think it's doing any of that. I think it has an audience. It's a core audience, but that's about it. I don't think it's doing much more beyond that. Recently, we got Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra, and I'm going to be honest here, guys. As good as this game may or may not be, it's a MOBA in 2025. We are sort of past the MOBA hype train. So I think the best thing this game could do is be a live service game and be a good game. And that will sustain an audience and potentially grow it if there's a good competitive scene for it, if it has some good combat and mechanics that allow it to be played at a higher level that makes people want to achieve these higher ratings in a ranked mode. I think that's the appeal of something like a MOBA game. You know, you don't play League of Legends to play it casually. You play it to play ranked and get mad that you're in loser's queue and you're stuck at gold 3 when you're really emerald because you swear you're better than all the scrubs you get matched with and it's their fault that you're losing, not you. Like, that's the appeal for a lot of people, man. So if it can tap into that, then it can bring energy to the fandom. I think Dragon Ball FighterZ did this as well in a really positive and good way where people wanted to get good at the game. They wanted to get better. It was a game you could get better at, be better at. You wanted to grind. You wanted to get good. And so that sparked interest in Dragon Ball as a whole. Like, oh, I'm playing this character. I'm going to look up a guide. I'm going to watch a video. I want to watch the episode the video was talking about. I want to read the manga chapter that relates to this. And it's sort of like this cyclical thing that pulls people deeper into the fandom and into the series and makes them more interested. I think it has the potential to do that. And I'm not a MOBA guy. I never really have been. I might give it a shot at some point. I always give a Dragon Ball game a shot. I usually don't like them, but I always give it a shot. So I might give it a chance and see what's going on with it. But yeah. Next, Dragon Ball The Breakers. One more thing I need to add since we got some news since this video was recorded, and that is Dragon Ball got a collab with Minecraft. Now, Dragon Ball gets collabs all the time with things like Fortnite. I think they did one with PUBG, or they were supposed to do one with PUBG, and they've probably done some other ones that I'm not even familiar with. I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't think it's the same as saying there's a new game coming out, but it is a collab with a very popular game to this day. Minecraft is still huge, so it's worth mentioning. Okay, let's talk about what I think is a really big issue that no one discusses when talking about this weird Dragon Ball drought we're in. Obviously, everyone talks about a few things. They talk about the war for Dragon Ball as an IP over in Japan. Who owns it? Who will own it? How will this changing of hands potentially happen? How will it not happen? Will it go so poorly and that Shueisha locks everything down, or will Ioku take over and make it all nostalgia bait because he really likes nostalgia bait for the series? That doesn't really matter to me. I think it does play a part, but because we know so little about it, because everyone's been so tight-lipped about this process over in Japan, I think it's hard for us to speculate on how it's actually affecting things in a negative or positive or any way. The other thing that people, of course, know is that Toriyama passed away. And obviously, I don't think the Dragon Ball Super manga would be on hiatus if Toriyama didn't pass away. I don't think a lot of the stuff going on with the IP would have happened if Toriyama didn't pass away. But I do think there was a mistake made regardless of if Toriyama was around or not. And this is going to sound dumb, but I think Sparking Zero and Dragon Ball Daima releasing on the exact same day was a mistake. You had two things: a new animated series and a hyped up video game, and you could have spread the hype over time, especially since people seem to think, again, I'm not in the community, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, people seem to think that Sparking Zero could have been cooked a little bit longer. They could have left it in the oven. It came out a bit raw. Ramsey wouldn't f with it. So I think you leave Dragon Ball Sparking Zero in the game dev oven for a little bit longer. Let Daima run, not all of its course maybe, but a bit of its course. And maybe as you get to the hype episodes at the back quarter of Daima, where the big battles are happening, that's when you drop Sparking Zero. You get a few more weeks, or a couple of months, I guess, of development time to really work out the game a bit more, make it a bit tighter, fix some of the core issues with the game. Would it be enough time to actually fix everything? Probably not. Would it be enough time to fix some things? Yes, I think so. But even if it came out after Daima, I think it continues the hype cycle for Dragon Ball a little bit longer, as opposed to giving us a purely dry spell right now. No animes on the horizon, no movie on the horizon, no manga on the horizon. The games that were coming out have been released. It's done. There is nothing going on in Dragon Ball as of right now. That is the current state of Dragon Ball. But we still love this series, and I love talking about it regardless. I think there's plenty of stuff to talk about and to enjoy and to be interested in this series. Things that haven't been said. Things that still need to be covered. And so I'm going to continue to do that. I think there's still plenty of content to talk about and cover, at least from a YouTuber's perspective. But I understand that not having new things to draw interest to the series, a lot of you guys are going to move on. And I don't think it's fair to you guys that there's content that could be made that isn't being made. But I don't know the specifics behind the scenes, neither do you. So I wouldn't take it out on any particular staff or the poor Toei intern that runs the Twitter account and has to deal with 80 comments every time they post about One Piece about where's Dragon Ball Super Season 2. Chill on that guy. He probably doesn't get paid much. All right, but that's all I really have to say. Have a good one.